Welcome to our HistoReddit channel, where we tell amazing revenge stories. Today we have my favorite Reddit story of all time. She's so awesome, so cruel and merciless, so devastating, that a part of me thinks she can be made up. But if it's made up, it's still a very amusing story. And if it's not made up, then, my God, this is one of the craziest professional revenge stories I've ever read in my life. All this happened to me a few years ago. I told a friend my divorce story and he told me to share. It started a few years ago when I thought we were happy. We were the typical suburban, professional couple. We were financially secure, healthy, good sex life, 2 children, a 14-year-old girl and a 19-year-old boy at the time. We spent a lot of time together. We were going through some behavior issues with my son, and tensions at home were a little high. I noticed that she was spending a lot more time on her phone, texting her friends. I didn't attach much importance to it. I started making more of an effort to leave work when I could, help her around the house, and be more emotionally available. But over the course of a few weeks, the distance between us grew. I ended up discovering some messages by chance when I turned on an old iPad for my son to use. Her Facebook Messenger was still connected, and there were a lot of suspicious messages with a guy from her hometown, who I'll call Jim Bob Cooter, or JBC for short. The messages weren't totally inappropriate, but I could tell there were a few missing based on the time and context of the messages. I made a mental note to keep an eye on it and tried to make things better. The next day, I took the day off to finish some projects I thought would make her happy, and I left her some sweet notes reminding her how much I value her. She was once again in the corner of the room, texting her friends. I took my son's iPad to the office, opened Facebook Messenger and saw in real time how my wife humiliated me. She and Jim Bob were making fun of me, of all my flaws, insecurities and fears that I confided to my partner. Now they were the laughingstock of her and Jim Bob. Not only that, but there was a sexual undertone to the entire conversation, especially when she was criticizing my performance in bed. I was able to take some screenshots, but I missed most of the messages because as the conversation progressed, she deleted them. I didn't have the emotional conditions to confront her. I stayed in the office until she went to bed and had a few drinks. I took the next day off and spent some time brooding and drinking and trying to decide what to do. Wife came home and wanted to know what was wrong, and I just said I had a bad day. A few minutes later, I was watching the iPad as the disaster continued to unfold. So I started a few whole weeks of taking screenshots and drinking and walking away from their relationship. I knew there was no turning back. The messages were now overtly sexual and my wife was fully involved with Jim Bob. They were exchanging "I love you." I consulted a lawyer and saw what my options were and started moving forward. That's when everything got incredibly surreal. As I scrolled through the messages, I discovered that Jim Bob was coming to town for a romantic weekend with my wife at a luxury hotel. I didn't know many details, as they must have had a phone conversation about it, but I managed to understand enough to know what was going on. The next day, my wife warmed to me and told me that she wanted to spend a weekend at the spa with her friends to relax, and that when she got back we could get on with our wedding. I agreed with her and said I would do anything to improve our relationship. I went to a lawyer and drafted a separation agreement, saying that she would have to leave the house, that she would have weekend visits without child support, until the divorce was finalized. So I waited for 2 agonizing weeks. After all that, most of my feelings for her were gone and I was just seething with rage like never before. On the appointed day, I took the day off from work. I withdrew half of the money from all the joint accounts and left half of it intact. I had already transferred my salary to a new bank. I closed our money market account and got a cashier's check for half of it and deposited my half into my new accounts. I stopped at Office Max and printed out about 75 pages of Facebook Messenger screenshots and lost my temper as I didn't want to be home. She texted me saying she was going on a trip and that she loved me. I told her to have fun. I arrived at the hotel around 8:30 and called my wife's phone from the lobby. It went straight to voicemail. They were probably already having fun. I went up to the counter and asked to use the phone to call Jim Bob's room. He answered after 3 rings. Hello? Jim Bob, can you send my wife down to the lobby, please? I don't know what you're talking about, man. Okay, so I guess I'll have to call Miss Jim Bob and bring her here. It was a total bluff. I knew he was married and I knew her first name, but that was about it. I heard an inaudible panic on the other end of the line. You have 5 minutes. I clicked. Not 2 minutes later, my wife stepped out of the elevator, looking a little confused. I took her to a corner of the lobby. She started talking nonsense, saying it wasn't what it looked like, etc., etc. I'm not here to discuss things. What is written on this pile of papers is what is happening. The only way I am not going to give a copy of this to your daughter, her parents, and email it to everyone we know is if you leave the house immediately. My wife was very proud. Our daughter was going through a rebellious teenage phase and knowing that would probably end their relationship forever. My wife was also the darling of her parents, and she always cared what they thought of her. I didn't have much influence over her and shame was the only card I could play. Also, her professional life was based on her image, so I knew she would protect her at all costs. This is a check for half of the financial market account. I withdrew my half of the money from all other joint accounts. You must have more than enough to get a place. She sobbed softly and I can sense her confusion and pain. But I can no longer postpone what I have to do. I hand him a separation document that I have carefully prepared, taking into account our situation. I ask her to read it, sign it, and leave it at the house when she goes to get her things. I say I don't want to see her anymore or hear about her affair with Jim Bob. Or I send everything I've discovered to everyone. I rush out of the hall and listen to her despair. I get in the car, drive to a quiet place and break down in tears. Before, I would have freaked out in front of her, screamed and cursed. But I managed to control myself enough to do it. I don't know what she did that night or over the weekend. She texted and called, wanting to talk. I just ignored it and hung up the phone. And on Monday afternoon, the change happened. She went to get her things and accepted the deal. I let her talk to our kids, explaining that mommy and daddy need some time apart, that we still love them, etc. The typical conversation of those who are going to get divorced. After a week, she wanted to have a serious conversation for the first time. I agreed, because she had already organized my things and knew what I wanted. But I thought I should listen to her. She apologized, begged for another chance, said she wanted her family back, that she would do anything. She knelt in my lap and cried a lot. I had no intention of getting back together with her. I suggested that she do couples therapy alone at a time that works for me. I told her that I couldn't live with her, but that she should stay close to the children and try to maintain a bond with them. And so our new routine began. She would come home, cook and have dinner with the children 3 times a week. She always left a plate for me. I kept my distance. She would clean the house and wash the children's clothes and then return to her house. We went to therapy together. It was basically her trying to work out her issues with the therapist, asking her why she did it, begging for my forgiveness, and me playing the victim. I would never give her another chance. All I wanted was to buy her time, establish myself as the primary caregiver for the children, and show her that she no longer lived in the house. After a few months, I went to my own therapist and was diagnosed with depression and post-traumatic stress disorder. I asked my work if I could work part-time for a while to deal with personal issues, and they happily accepted. After 6 months of therapy, I told her that I couldn't forgive her now and that I wanted an amicable divorce, but that she was still the love of my life and that maybe one day we could try again. She was devastated, but she agreed to get a divorce if I promised to try again someday. Once the divorce was finalized, I needed the kids to want to be with me. I left the Google history open on the home computer with a search on how to survive a wife's infidelity and some cheating articles printed in the kitchen. My daughter found it and came to me crying. I told her that this was a mistake, that mommy made a mistake, that mommy still loves her and that I would always be there for her. My daughter, who used to admire my wife so much, now wouldn't talk to her without a fight. And she was devastated when the judge heard the children's testimony. A few months ago, the younger brother accompanied me, while the older sisters led the way, both wanting to stay in the house where we grew up, when the divorce was finalized. I got the house, needing to acquire something to add to my equity, but that's okay as I now have primary custody of the kids. I received generous child support due to the difference in our incomes, as I work part-time. For the past 2 years, I've been living at home with my kids, working part-time, asking my now ex-partner for help, and on weekends when she takes the kids, I can party on Tinder and with some friends with benefits that I knew. In my children's eyes, I am the patron saint of fatherhood, always there and doing the right things. However, in my ex's eyes, I'm the one that got away that she's always wanted. I get the bonus of having sex with her whenever I want, although she dangles the carrot of the possibility of reconciliation, but it will never happen. This account is like the Joker or Lex Luthor getting divorced. This guy is a true evil genius, as he not only emerged victorious but also completely destroyed his wife's life. It's painful to think that he did all of this in a calculated way. I would love to believe that this story is fictional, because if it were true, the guy would have probably taken or broken up with his wife's lover, wouldn't he? But strangely, he didn't do any of that, which leads me to believe this story is real. And since I love revenge stories, here's another one. Enjoy your time in prison for destroying my clothes. This happened when I was about 14 or 15 years old. My mother was married to a man who had an adult son from a previous marriage. I think he was in his early 20s. This stepbrother led the hippie life, living on the streets by choice, and once a year or so, he would show up at our house with his friends, bringing lots of dirty clothes and weed. They basically took over our house as their own, going so far as to forget the gas burners on the stove once. I, like any teenager, was obsessed with my clothes. It had a few pieces to wash in the dryer, including an amazing pair of corduroy pants that I'd only worn once. So my stepbrother and his friends were doing laundry, and instead of doing something normal like moving my things or putting them in my room, they decided to cut the fabric and make a cute cover out of my pants. When I saw my stepbrother wearing that cape, I immediately recognized the material. I exclaimed, "Those are my pants that were in the laundry." He responded as if it were a find it, get it rule. I was furious, but his father did nothing about it. My mother was also upset as she had bought the pants for me and they were expensive. Even so, she endured everything to keep the marriage. I wanted to get revenge on my stepfather, but he had nothing of value due to his lifestyle. Then I remembered a discussion between my parents in which my mother mentioned that my half-brother had gotten a girl pregnant and had a 2-year-old son, but had never helped financially or even visited the child since birth. The next day my parents were at work and I was at home listening to music or something. I decided to call the police, but wasn't sure what to say. I told the dispatcher that I knew of someone who might have a warrant for his arrest for non-payment of child support. Before you question how a teenager would know this, well, my biological father is a terrible person and at one point almost got arrested for the same crime. The dispatcher asked for the person's name, and I mentioned Leah Gay, step 4. They confirmed that there was a warrant for him. I gave my address and waited for about 20 minutes for the cops to arrive. When they knocked on the door, I let them in and took them to him. "He's right here, officers," he said with an emotional smile on his face. They handcuffed him and took him to prison. An hour later, my mother called home after her stepfather used the phone to reach her father. I told her exactly what I did. She whispered "good job," but then pretended to scold me loudly as her stepdad was nearby. The stepfather was unable to pay the fine and bail quickly, so Leah Gay had to spend the night in jail. The memory of seeing him being taken away in a police car still brings me happiness even after 20 years. Fortunately, my mother divorced this obnoxious individual and is no longer married to him. Now, it is clear who is responsible in this family. This guy lost his job, thinking he would get rich, but it turned out to be the opposite. Hey Anita, I thought I'd share my story here on Reddit. I work for a construction company and we do home renovations. We have a rule that allows us to keep anything we find hidden behind walls. We hired this guy we really needed, but he was a bad worker and a complete problem. I've worked at this company for 5 years while he only had a year of construction experience after being fired from his accounting job because of a DUI. Anyway, he used to make fun of me, my clothes and my accent. One day, he took it too far by telling my boss about private photos on my Instagram account. He took my phone, looked at my Instagram page and showed my boss pictures of me smoking weed. Little did he know that my boss was my friend of 8 years, and we used to smoke together before quitting. I was furious at the invasion of privacy and decided to plot revenge. He was always late and complained that the trains were in traffic, using that as an excuse. He knew that one day he would win the lottery and quit his job. So I bought some fake gold coins online and put them in a metal box I found at an antique shop. I waited for a chance to hide it in a wall. Fortunately, I didn't have to wait too long. The day he found the coins was like a gift from heaven for him. He opened the box and called my boss a loser, saying that he was now rich. Little did he know that this was the best day of my life. After he quit, my boss told us he was going to fire him anyway for always being late. The gold coins were fake, but it was the best $40 investment I've ever made. Of course, this is illegal and I'm not encouraging the sale of counterfeit products or scamming companies, but ultimately it was a lesson for him to learn to respect others. Mixed emotions of revenge and satisfaction filled me that day. I like to think he went to a pawn shop and made a big deal out of it, saying he wanted to sell his gold. And then he got arrested or something like that, because that's a fraud. You cannot walk into an establishment and try to buy something with counterfeit money. It does not work. Oh, I would love to know what happened to this guy after he got off a construction site. Well, that's our /ProRevenge. The last ProRevenge video was awesome, so I want to know if this is something you guys want to see more of. You guys want more revenge stories from me? Because I love this subreddit. So I hope the answer is yes. Tell me in the comments. Hey guys, did you like this video? I hope so, because I had a lot of fun telling this revenge story for you. If you also like revenge stories on Reddit, don't forget to subscribe to my channel HistoReddit, leave your like and turn on the notification bell. That way you don't miss any new videos. I post videos every day, with the best stories on Reddit for you. Thank you very much for listening, and until next time. Goodbye. If you liked the video, subscribe to our channel. Now check out the video above. Or watch this below. Thank you, and until the next video.